Welcome back to Indiana at the voice of college football, and your Hoosiers are 10-0. Indiana has won 10 games in a football season for the first time ever in program history, and they did it by knocking off the Michigan Wolverines at home on CBS by a score of 20-15. It wasn't pretty. It started out that way. Indiana was playing very well in the first half, went up 17-3. It looked like Indiana was going to comfortably win over Michigan. Michigan had no life on offense outside of the first drive of the game, and Indiana was getting things rolling on offense, and their defense was holding up. But then that second half happened for Indiana, and their defense continued to clamp down. Their defense continued to play well, but Indiana's offense completely fell apart. Curtis Rourke threw for 206 yards in this football game, but he threw for 190 of those yards in the first half. He only threw for 16 total yards and a pick in the second half, and Indiana still found a way to win. And now a lot of people can contribute that to Michigan being a poor offensive team. And yeah, that is true. Michigan is not a great offensive team. Davis Warren has not thrown for 200 yards this season at all, I believe. And if he has, it was against one of their worst opponents. He has not done well this season. And Indiana held him to 130 passing yards. But still, Michigan has tons of talent. We knew coming into this game that Michigan had a massive talent advantage over Indiana, and that Indiana had a massive coaching advantage over Michigan, and their players, despite being less talented, play hard, and they are determined to win and to be basically their underdogs and prove the world that they are actually a great football team, that these players are good, that each individual player wants to prove himself on this team in Indiana that doesn't normally have success, and Kurt Cignetti wants to prove himself too and prove to the world that Indiana can win. But Michigan's talent advantage, you could see it at times in this game, especially in the second half. Michigan's defensive line really started to clamp down on Indiana's offensive line. Now, I will say one of Indiana's offensive linemen, Drew Evans, is out for the season now, which is a tough blow for Indiana. And Indiana's offensive line, while still okay in this game overall, definitely showed some cracks. It was nowhere near the defense that we have been used to seeing. Or, this offense, the offensive line where we've been used to seeing them hold up against defenses. And basically, this was the first game where Curtis Rourke had a hard time just staying back there and not getting sacked or at least pressured. And that was the problem for Indiana in this game. Indiana's done a great job of holding opposing defenses from getting to Rourke. And basically, they've allowed Indiana to have a great running game this year. Not this game. Indiana's run game really struggled. They could not get anything going on the ground. Actually, Tyson Lawton had the most effective afternoon for Indiana, which is crazy because of the fact that he has fewer yards per carry than Justice Ellison and even Kalen Black, two other running backs for Indiana. But when you look at Tyson Lawton, he's that big bruiser back. And against those really beefy defensive linemen for Michigan, he was able to have a little bit of success. So I believe overall, when you look at this game, it showcased that, yes, Indiana's a good football team because they won. And they were able to, with that massive talent gap between Indiana and Michigan, they were still able to win. But at the same time, it does show you that while Indiana has been dominant all year, when they finally do play a team that has tons of talent, they can't blow teams out. And I know this is one game. And maybe in 10 different results against Michigan, maybe Indiana would beat Michigan by more in some of those other games. We don't know. Maybe Michigan would win one or two of those games. But unfortunately for Indiana, I think they're a great team. Compared to where they've been, they are an elite team for IU standards. Now, in college football, are they an elite team? No, they're not. Because when you look at the top teams in college football, the Oregons and the Texases, and even you look at a team like Georgia, who just lost today, or Alabama, those teams have talent. They just have a massive talent advantage. Talent doesn't always win you games, though. You can be a less talented team and win, but when you are a less talented team, you have to bring your A game every single game. How many times have we seen a really talented team play a poor game and they were still able to win because of the fact that they just basically out-talented the other team. They were able to play a C-minus game and still get the win. Indiana, they've basically almost been picture perfect all season long. And maybe their roughest game was against Washington because of the fact Curtis Rourke was injured, Taven Jackson was in, and Indiana's defense did a great job forcing a pick six in the game, 2 picks in total on Will Rogers, and they were able to comfortably win. But in this game, Indiana started out looking like they were just going to do what they've been doing all year. They were going to blow out the Michigan Wolverines or at least win very comfortably, and they almost let it slip away. And I thought at several points in this game, I'm like, yep, this is it. I'm not saying it's the same old Indiana. That never entered my mind because some people are going to be like, oh, it's the same old Indiana. Even if Indiana lost this game, do you know how far Indiana's come? And I know their schedule, but they've still dominated everybody that they played. They're still having a very impressive season. But if they had lost, it would have put a bit of a damper on the rest of the season. It really would have, because people are now saying Indiana can make the playoffs. And unfortunately, that's what happens when you win. People start to expect more from you. So Indiana passed the test. That's all you can say. And when you look at teams like Georgia, even though they just lost to Ole Miss today, when they barely beat Kentucky earlier in the season, that's what people said. Oh, well, they survived. They won the game. That's all that matters. Well, with Indiana, let's treat them the same way, at least for this game. No, it doesn't matter what happens against Ohio State. They can lose by 50 to Ohio State in 2 weeks. Still doesn't take away from how great of a season that they're having. I don't think they will lose by 50 to Ohio State. I think it's going to be a very competitive game. I mean, Ohio State's definitely going to be favored. They're definitely the way more talented team, even more so than Michigan. It's going to be tough for Indiana to go into the shoe and get a win. But like I said, they had to win this game first for that game to matter for the playoff. Because if Indiana loses to Ohio State, especially if it's not a bad loss, Indiana can still make the college football playoff. If they beat Purdue, go 11-1, they'll get in. I believe they will get in, especially with all this chaos going on. Now that you have Georgia losing, Miami losing, it's opening up more doors for Indiana to have that one loss and make the playoff. But that would have not happened if Indiana didn't win this game. And that's what the CBS crew said when IU won. It wasn't pretty. It definitely was not pretty. But championship teams, or teams that are very, very good, find ways to win. And Indiana, several times in this game, left it to the defense. They left it to Indiana's defense to win this game. And in years past, they would have given up a score. Under Tom Allen, previous coaches, Kevin Wilson for sure, Indiana's defense would have given up this game. But they didn't. They held firm. They held tough. And yeah, part of it is that Michigan's offense is not great. But Michigan still has talented players in Khalil Mullings. They have Colston Loveland. Good players. Donovan Edwards, he almost broke through a few times. He's a very, very talented player. He's a very quick guy. But the thing is for Donovan Edwards is he's basically been panned throughout his career that he's not a great route runner. Once he gets a crease, he's gone. But he's not good at reading the defense. And I saw it several times in this game. If he had to cut back a couple times through some holes, maybe he could have broke off a few. But the few that he almost did break off, Indiana tackled him. And I will say, Indiana's defenders did a fantastic job in this game of tackling. There were several plays where Michigan could have blown it open. Davis Warren didn't do much. But honestly, Davis Warren wouldn't have had to do much if just some of those short passes and some of those runs just broke off for big gains. But Indiana did not let it happen. And Michigan dominated the second half when it came to, possession, like time of possession. Michigan basically turned into Iowa, what we've seen from Iowa in years past. What they basically did was like, we're going to keep this ball away from Indiana. We're going to keep it away from Indiana, and we're going to go down the field, take as much time as we need, and just get Indiana's offense out of sync. Keep them off the field. And that's what Michigan did. The problem was for Michigan, though, is that they weren't capitalizing on those long drives into touchdowns. They did it once. They had one touchdown, but on the other 3 drives that they scored, all of them ended in field goals. And that, to me, was the key that right there for Indiana, was that they bended, but they didn't break on Michigan's long drives on a lot of them. And in the one time they gave up a score, that was on a short field because Indiana had a terrible punt by James Evans, which is rare because he's a great punter. Had a bad punt. No one's perfect. Michigan got great field position, and they were able to score that touchdown. But then Indiana did not allow them to get the 2 to tie the game. Just the little things. Indiana made a ton of mistakes. Starting out with at the end of the first half, they're up 17-3, and Indiana went conservative and didn't do anything with it. They didn't try to go down there and score again. Imagine Indiana goes down there and scores even a field goal before half to go up 20-3. That completely changes the complexion of the game, but Indiana just took it a half. I get it. You don't want to make a mistake. But then going out into the second half, Indiana, first time they get the ball, Rourke throws a pick. He throws a pick. He's basically almost been flawless this year, but he threw an interception. And it gave Michigan great field position, but Indiana held them to a field goal. But still, it's just one of those things where Michigan had several chances to win, and Indiana had several chances to blow this game open, and neither thing happened. Indiana let Michigan come back, and Indiana took their foot off the gas for the first time this season. And whether that's because they got nervous, they let the moment get to them, which I don't think that's the case. Cignetti is too good of a coach. His team is too well coached, too experienced for me to believe that that's what happened. That they let the lights get to them. But I think Michigan locked in. I think when Michigan, especially when they got that pick, when they realized they had a shot to win, then they put it all out on the line. And they played hard. And that's what people were giving them credit for. You got to give Michigan credit. You got to give Michigan credit just as much as you give Indiana credit for their defense not bending and allowing them to hold on with their offense playing as poorly as they did in the second half. You also got to give credit to Michigan's, team as a whole. The defense really clamped down, shut down Indiana's offense completely, so much so that at one point Indiana had -2 yards, and it was in the fourth quarter in the second half. They had -2 yards in the second half at one point. It was terrible for Indiana. But then on offense, Michigan's offense kept fighting. They didn't play well on offense, but they kept scratching and clawing, and they almost got it done. But I'm just so proud of Indiana. I'm so proud of this team and just so happy for Hoosier fans. And what's crazy is they didn't storm the field or knock down the goalpost. A lot of people said that was going to happen, right? Oh, Indiana's going to knock down the goalpost. They're going to storm the field. They didn't even do that. That just cracks me up. Like Indiana, the fans took it like we won. We did it. And I don't know. I mean, Indiana was expected to win. They were favored by 15. But, I mean, I don't know if some people realize how monumental of a win this is. Most people do. Most football fans do know. I will say that. Most football fans do know. But a lot of people don't know how monumental of a win this is. Not only is Indiana 10-0 for the first time ever, first 10-win season ever. So now the only two power conference teams that don't have a 10-win season is Iowa State. They could get that this year. And Vanderbilt. Probably not going to get it. But still, Indiana was one of those three programs. Ole Miss was till a few years ago. That's why Lane Kiffin's done a great job there. But when you look at the fact that also Indiana beat Michigan for only the second time since 1987, and the last time they won was in that 2020 season during the pandemic when there were no fans. So this is the first time that Indiana fans have been able to witness a win over Michigan. I can't say a beatdown like the 2020 season. It was in the first half. It was a beatdown in the first half, but Michigan just absolutely stormed back and made this one heck of a game and almost pulled it off. But Indiana only their second win over Michigan since 1987, and the first time Indiana fans have been able to witness it. Because in 1987, Indiana knocked off Michigan, and the fans were there. It was at Indiana. But they hadn't been able to beat them since. And this is also the first time Indiana was favored against Michigan since 1968. I didn't even know they had betting odds all the way back then. I didn't even know that. I thought that started in like the 80s. So 1968 was the last time Indiana was favored to beat Michigan. So when they won in 87 and they won in 2020, they were not favored. It's crazy. I mean, it's just unprecedented stuff. I know Michigan's having a down year. I know that. But this is still a talented football team. This is still a team that has more guys that are going to be playing on Sundays next year than Indiana. More 4-stars and a couple 5-stars. Indiana just don't have that. Indiana's got a bunch of guys that are scratching and clawing to prove themselves. And Curt Cignetti, I don't know, man. I will say with Curt Cignetti, I could tell he was nervous. I could tell. This was the first game that when you looked at his face, yeah, he still had that determined look. He still had that stern look on his face, but he was concerned. And I don't know. I really don't think Indiana had an answer because Indiana's offense fell apart. After they didn't do anything at the end of the first half, started out the second half, Michigan kept the ball away from Indiana, and Indiana's offense, I don't know if they just got cold being on the sidelines, on the bench. I have no idea. But they fell apart. They absolutely fell apart. And their offense couldn't do anything until the end when it mattered enough. That kick return by Keyshawn Williams was huge. Massive, because it flipped the field, gave Indiana good field goal position. And because Indiana, I mean, literally they were almost close to getting a touchdown. I don't know if you guys probably saw, but Elijah Surratt dropped the ball at the 3. He almost had an amazing catch. But Elijah Surratt, couple drops. And that's another thing. Indiana had a lot of drops. People are blaming Rourke, but there were a lot of drops. And there were a lot of missed calls in this game as well. You can say on both sides. I do think that there were more missed calls against Michigan, though. Michigan, there was a lot of holds they didn't call. They let them be physical. But see, in that type of game, that favors Michigan. Michigan wants to be the more physical team, and with their talent, they can afford to be the more physical team. But Indiana normally just doesn't have nowhere near enough depth to be even able to compete, but they do now. They have enough there, and they lost a couple of guys. There was a bad targeting call on Jameer Johnson. That was not targeting. They knocked him out of the game. Like I said, Indiana was down a couple offensive linemen. And Miles Price got hurt. So Michigan, they forced their will on Indiana. Indiana suffered some injuries, but in years past, that would have ended it. I'll never forget the Cincinnati game when Micah McFadden got ejected for targeting, and it completely changed the game. Indiana had no chance after that. Well, in this game, tons of things went wrong. Tons of things went wrong for Indiana in this game, whether it's guys getting hurt, bad calls, poor offense in the second half. Just all across the board, things went wrong for Indiana, and they still found a way to win. That's how this team's different. Is this a top 5 to 10 team? I don't know. I really don't. The way that they played up to this point, yes, I would say that they are, but the schedule's been easy, as everybody has said. But the thing is that looking at this game, I don't think that this makes me, feel more confident that Indiana is, they're going to be able to compete in the playoffs if they make it, or even beat Ohio State in 2 weeks if they play them, when they play them, that they can win. None of that answers any of that. What this answers to me, though, is that Indiana, when their backs are against the wall and things aren't going well, something that they haven't had to deal with this season, they can still win. And I think that's the big thing. And I do think the moment got to him a bit. I don't think it got to him a lot because, like I said, an experienced team, well-coached team. But I could see it in Rourke's eyes. I could even see it in Cignetti's eyes. When that tide turned in this game, even the crowd, it was like, oh, no. It's going to happen again. The same old Indiana. It's going to happen again. They're going to blow the game. And trust me, I was feeling it. I was feeling it just as much as everybody else. I was like, oh, no. They're going to lose. They're going to blow it. But I kept watching, and they fought back, especially the defense. They fought back, and Indiana got the win. I mean, it is amazing. Like it doesn't matter, as Jeff said in the chat, appreciate you for being here, Jeff, and appreciate Troy V as well and Jackson for being here. But like Jeff says, it's crazy whether you like Indiana or not. It does not matter. History's being made. Yeah, even if you loathe Indiana, which I really don't think there's that many people that do, Purdue fans. But other than Purdue fans, I don't really think anybody loathes Indiana. There's no reason to. They've never been a threat in football. But all I know is that you gotta at least be like, this is amazing. I would have never thought this. I've said all year I had Indiana going 7-5. It's what I thought they were going to do. I didn't think they were going to do any better than that. You know why? Because I'm like, they got a pretty favorable schedule, but they got a bunch of 2-star guys, 3-star guys. Cignetti wins. He wins. Google me, as he said. But I'm like, they're going to have a winning record, but they're going to be like 7-5. It's going to be a good year. 7-5. I mean, imagine that Indiana, instead of being 10-0 right now, was 6-4. And you play Ohio State, you lose 6-5, beat Purdue, and you go 7-5. Most people would have been thrilled with that. I would have. Indiana hasn't won a bowl game since 1991, which, again, they should have beat Tennessee in 2019, should have beat Duke in 2015, had a shot against Ole Miss in 2020, but that's beside the point. Indiana hasn't won a bowl game since 1991, and they haven't made a bowl game in 4 years. So just making a bowl game would have been a big deal for Indiana. 7-5 would have been a really solid year. They're 10-0. They're 10-0, and at worst, you would think 11-1. You really do. I mean, if they lost to Ohio State and then lost to Purdue, that would just be tragic. That would be tragic, right? Because Purdue is awful, but it could still happen. But even 10-2, worst case scenario, 10-2, still just a fantastic season. It's put Indiana on the map. And by the way, and we're going to get into this probably on Tuesday and in future shows. We're going to be talking about Curt Cignetti, obviously. Is he going to stay in Indiana? Well, there's been reports that they're doing contract negotiations. So they probably are already feeling the heat. They're probably already feeling the heat that he could go somewhere else. So they don't want that to happen. I definitely don't want that to happen. And hopefully they can keep the assistants for a while too, the coordinators, because you lose those guys. They're a big reason why all this is going on as well. But definitely, Curt Cignetti coming in, and even though you still say a favorable schedule, this was unprecedented. No one thought this was going to happen. Not even me. Nobody did. And if there's anybody out there that's going to post on social media, oh, I had them going 10-0. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. No one thought this. This is crazy. This is unprecedented. And I'm just so happy to see it. I'm so happy for Indiana fans, not even just for myself. Yeah, I love the Hoosiers. I do. I love Alabama. They will always be my favorite college football team. But I love IU. I just got this soft spot for the Hoosiers. I don't know why. I've always done. Probably, like I said, I've always said it's because they lose. They don't win. They don't win. And it's just something endearing about a program that doesn't win finally having success. I've been watching the Hoosiers for a decade. They've never won anything outside of the 2020 season and kind of the 2019 year. But finally, Indiana football, after all these decades of miserable football, they have a good football team. That's all you can say. They got a good football team. They might not be elite. They might not be a title contender. Who cares, though? This is just a good team. It's a great story, and I'm just so happy to see it. Indiana knocks off Michigan. It was close. They almost blew it, but they're 10-0. We got Jackson here saying, what's up, Hoosier Nation? Appreciate it, Jackson. Jeff says, I'm here tonight. What a game. What the heck are Indiana fan? Yeah, absolutely. Indiana fans, subscribe if you are new to Indiana, the voice of college football, whether you are watching on the Big Ten channel or the Indiana channel. If you are new, subscribe to the Indiana channel. You're not going to want to miss any future content, because even if this is a one-year thing, even if it's a one-year thing, I know there's IU fans out there because they've been supporting this team through thick and thin, through, miserable football, and now they're seeing some good football, and now people are joining the bandwagon. There's people saying, oh, I love Indiana now. It's just hilarious. But there's been people that have rooted for them for 30, 40 years. They were showing before this game, like in the pregame show, oh, I've been a Hoosier fan for 30 years, and I've never seen anything like this. So you know what? Even garbage teams, whether it's because you went to the school or you live in the state or some connection, people like bad football teams sometimes. So it's nice to see a bad football team have a good season. But even if this is a one-year deal where they're really, really, really good, you're still going to want to subscribe to Indiana, the voice of college football, especially if you are a fan. But this might not be a one-year deal. And if they can continue to have success, they keep Cignetti, and hopefully Indiana can continue to have success, you're going to want to be along for the ride. So definitely subscribe to the channel. Definitely appreciate it. Troy V says, congrats on the victory, Jeffrey. Thanks, Troy, for staying classy, cheering the team in the stands and not storming the field. Hey, I'm shocked they didn't, to be honest, Troy. I'm shocked they didn't. And actually, it's funny because I was on the Michigan channel the other night with TJ and John, and they were saying that Indiana was going to storm the field. They were saying that Indiana was going to tear the goalpost down, storm the field. And I told them I didn't think they would, honestly. I didn't think they would, because Indiana was favored by 14. Indiana was, in the top 10. Michigan was unranked. Like, Indiana needed to treat it like, you know what? We need to win. Like, I'm not saying like we're supposed to win, but in this situation, yes. But I can see TJ's and John's point of view. And by the way, if you're not subscribed to the Michigan channel, definitely check out Michigan, the voice of college football. They do a great job over there. But still, the thing is, though, is they thought because it's Michigan, and I get it, the brand that they are, that Indiana was going to just completely, go nuclear. And the fans were just going to storm the field, carry the goalposts into some river, if there's a river near Bloomington, kind of like Tennessee did when they beat Bama for the first time since 2007, back in 2022 or whatever. But Indiana didn't do that. I was kind of shocked. Even though I said on air that I didn't think they would for some reason, I'm still kind of shocked, though. especially the way they won. Jackson said, let's get Indiana, the voice of college football, to 1,000 subs. Absolutely, definitely appreciate that, Jackson. Again, if you are new, subscribe. And also check out my YouTube channel as well, Only Talk Sports, where I talk sports every single day, or at least I try to. College football, college basketball, NFL, NBA. You're not going to want to miss any of it. If you're enjoying this show, you probably would maybe like checking out my channel as well, so would appreciate that as well. And also the Alabama channel at the Voice of College Football. Me and Jackson do a call-in show over there on Thursday nights at 10 o'clock. You're not going to want to miss it. Jeff says it's incredible and records have been broken. It's completely amazing. I mean, every week, it's every week. I mean, it started out with them beating Western Illinois 77-3, and they broke a program record in points. And then they broke a program record in yards in that game. It's like, yeah, well, it's Western Illinois. They're trash. That doesn't matter. But it's like still impressive. Then they go to UCLA. And they get their first ever one in the Rose Bowl. And it's like, wow, that's a big deal. But you know what? UCLA sucks. So that's no big deal. UCLA just beat Iowa, by the way. So maybe they don't suck too bad. But like, and then, I mean, it just goes on and on. Like, and then Indiana gets game day to come and big noon kickoff. Like, just every week something happened. And now to start out, not only do they start out 9-0 for the first time ever, they start out 10-0 for the first time ever and have their first 10-win season. I mean, think about it. It took Ole Miss longer to get that 10-win season in the season. Indiana started out 10-0. And I know the schedule, but it's still mightily impressive. Troy V said, 1987, I was 17. I had no clue Indiana beat Michigan. That's hilarious, Troy. I don't blame you. I don't blame you on the other stuff. I get it, you know. But, yeah, Indiana did beat Michigan back in 1987 before the 2020 season. That's hilarious, though. And Jack saying, telling your friends and family, cashiers at Publix, any grocery store, Publix, Wegmans, Safeway, you know, all the groceries for Fred Myers. You definitely want to check out Indiana at the Voice of College Football and Only Talk Sports as well. Would appreciate it. And the Alabama Call-In Show. Troy says, I'm rooting for Indiana, except when they play the Buckeyes. It's a feel-good story for sure. I mean, it's the ultimate feel-good story. I mean, Indiana is the losingest power conference program of all time. I mean, they just lose. I mean, they're the perennial loser every year. And they're an automatic win for all the great programs in college football until this season. And 2020 as well. I mean, they beat Penn State and Michigan, but that year was still weird. I mean, this just feels legit. It feels legit to knock off Michigan in a normal season in front of fans. It feels legit. We got Michael here. Appreciate it. Says, let's go. Appreciate you for being here. Michael says, I know the Michigan offense isn't good, but great defense. Absolutely. That's what I'm saying. Like, Michigan's offense is not that great, but Indiana's defense is why they won, though, because in years past, Indiana's defense would have allowed them to score and win. So, definitely, Indiana's defense deserves the MVP. Outside of Rourke and the receivers in the first quarter and first half. I mean, they were great at first, but not in the second. The defense deserves the MVP. Jeff said, nobody had them going 10-0 if they say they're lying. And somebody will. You know, that's the thing. Somebody will. There's going to be somebody out there that's going to be saying, I had them going 9-3 or 10-2. No, you didn't. Nobody did. I said 7-5. I remember people were telling me I was insane for saying they were going to go 7-5. And I thought maybe I was. I thought maybe it might have been some bias. But the thing is, I'm not biased, you know, when I make predictions most of the time. I mean, I really don't. If I do, it is very rare. Like, I picked LSU to beat Bama tonight. We'll see. Hopefully Alabama wins, but I picked LSU. Why? Because I feel LSU is going to win. Could be wrong, though. I picked Ole Miss to beat Georgia, and they did. I mean, I'm wrong on a lot of picks. I pick games wrong all the time, like everybody else does. But I don't pick with my heart in games. I picked Indiana to win this game 31-17. And this is the first time that Indiana didn't cover, basically, this season outside of the Florida International game in week 1. And it's the first time that I was basically too bullish because I picked Indiana to beat Michigan State by the same score, 31-17, and then they blew the doors off of them. I picked them to beat Nebraska 28-24. They blew the doors off of them. So I was like, you know what? They'll win by 14. It didn't happen. But you know what? A win's a win. In this case, a win is a win. Jack said I had Indiana at 5-7 in the preseason. I mean, I don't blame you. I honestly do not blame you at all whatsoever, Jackson, for saying they were not going to make a bowl game. I mean, it was not a bad pick at all. I don't blame you. I mean, honestly, the only reason that I picked Indiana to have a winning record is because Cignetti had never had a losing season. That was the main reason. He never had a losing season. So I'm like, why start now? And the schedule that they had. So that was just my opinion. And truth be told, yeah, I was I undersold him, and I would have never saw this coming. CW says, great win today, Hoosiers. Appreciate you being here, CW. Absolutely, Jim Coyle. I've definitely heard of Jim Coyle before. Does Indiana radio show. I think every week he does a really good job. But appreciate, again, for being here, Michael. Definitely trying to get more people to Indiana at the voice of college football. I mean, people like listening to multiple different podcasts. Like, if you listen to other Indiana podcasts out there, you're going to want to listen to this one as well. We got a lot of great content coming. And then Steven says 2 weeks to prepare for the Hoosiers. There should be no excuse to head into Columbus. You know what? Like I said, I'm not even thinking about that game, Steven. I'm not thinking about it. And whatever happens, it's not going to put a damper on how great of a season this has been for Indiana. If somehow they beat Ohio State, or even if it's close, great, awesome. It just adds to how awesome the season's been. But if they get beat by 30, it is what it is. Indiana's had such a great year, but we'll see. We'll see. You never know. I'm excited for the game, but I'm just so excited for Indiana fans. 10-0. And they fought through adversity. I mean, it wasn't pretty, like I said. I mean, Davis Warren, Indiana, holding them to 137 yards. Look at the run game. Khalil Mullings, 30 yards. Donovan Edwards, 46 yards. That's really good against their run game. And then Indiana, 206 through the air. Most of that in the first half. But Indiana ran the ball better than Michigan did with the running backs. Not Rourke. Rourke hurt with the sacks that he took. But Walton and Ellison ran better, especially Lawton and Michigan's backs. I mean, Indiana did just enough. Just a great effort from Indiana, and they're 10-0. Your Hoosiers are 10-0, and I'm glad they have a bye too. Absolutely glad they have a bye before Ohio State. They need it. But it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. We're going to be back on Tuesday night at 7 o'clock to talk more about this game, talk more about maybe early preview for Ohio State somewhat, but a lot of stuff going on internally, just looking at the season as a whole, doing probably a season outlook, probably going to talk about maybe some stuff with Cignetti, maybe contract stuff if that's coming out more, maybe some recruiting news if some guys commit, because there were guys at this game, maybe some of them commit. Julian Lewis, he was supposed to be at this game. He didn't come. It's not looking good for him to go to IU. It is what it is, but Indiana can still land some other talented players if they can't get him, but just all these things are trending up for IU. People are even saying expand the Rock, expand the stadium, because Indiana has so many fans of the stadium now. They're packing them in. That's what happens when you win. And Indiana, they just got to keep on winning, even after this season. Don't make it a one-year deal like TCU. Definitely hope that doesn't happen. But for now, just celebrate this win over Michigan. IU is 10-0. What a tough, hard-fought, gritty win. Wasn't pretty, but at the end of the day, a win is a win. Indiana knocking off Michigan for the second time since 1987. And they're 10-0 for the first time ever, first 10-win season. Appreciate everybody for being here. Like the stream down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Share the stream out on social media. And definitely would hope to see you guys back on Tuesday nights at 7 o'clock for just a retrospective of Indiana's season and a lot of other stuff we're going to be talking about. It's going to be a lot of fun. Definitely hit that notification bell so you don't miss that. But appreciate everybody for being here. Your Hoosiers are 10-0, everybody. Go Hoosiers.